This time on Psychic Investigators. In an LA suburb, a nurse is carjacked.
They needed money, let's go steal it.
But where is she? And is she alive or dead? Miles away, a woman is jolted by a vision.
Like having an electric shock. I could see where she was.
But the police aren't buying it. They think she's guilty.
And arresting her for murder.
Her vision becomes her nightmare.
I could feel something. She's in this canyon.
From downtown Los Angeles is the district of Pacoima. Today, it's a quiet working-class neighborhood. But in 1980, it's a different story. Violent crime was on the rise, and homicides peaked in the city of Los Angeles. December 15th, around 10:45 p.m., a black pickup truck stops at a light at Foothill Boulevard in Arroyo. A witness sees a woman being carjacked.
And one of them jumped her on the driver's side, and the other one comes running around on the other side, and she was screaming.
6 hours later, 5 a.m., the LA Fire Department responds to a report of a vehicle on fire in the 1100 block of Bromont Avenue. Thinking the truck might be stolen, the LAPD is notified. At 4:30 that same day, a distraught woman enters the Foothill Division of the LAPD.
An individual wanted to speak to a detective about a missing person.
Patrick Conway was a 20-year veteran with the Los Angeles Police Department.
I talked to a lady named Shirley Trissell, and she told me about a friend of hers, Melanie Uribe, who had left for work the night before and never arrived. She and other friends had spent the night and most of the day searching for her. At about 3:30 in the afternoon, she had discovered the truck Uribe was driving on Bromont Street, burned.
The same truck that the fire department had responded to at 5 a.m.
Melanie Uribe was 31 years old. She was a nurse. She was a single mother, was a very dependable, reliable, responsible individual. I personally, at that point, feel that Melanie Uribe has probably met with some sort of foul play.
He starts searching for evidence by checking the woman's burnt-out truck, but comes up with nothing.
So what we wanted to do now was find whether there were any other witnesses we were unaware of who might have seen more or knew more.
The LAPD goes back to interview the witness of the carjacking the night before.
He indicated that the truck, after he'd seen it turn right, had pulled to the curb for a moment.
Police check out the spot and find a box of tissue in the gutter.
It was later shown to Melanie Uribe's roommate, and she identified it as having been in the truck.
So where is Melanie Uribe? The next day, the police ask the media for help.
Police have launched a massive search for the vocational nurse, possibly the largest manhunt for Valley Police. Following a door-to-door search in the area yesterday, equestrian patrols set out along the foothills near Lopez Canyon this morning.
We focused our attention on Lopez Canyon because Lopez Canyon was a logical location based on the known factors: where the truck was taken, where the truck was burned. It's a remote area that would be a good place to leave somebody. It wasn't the only area we were looking at, but it was an area we were looking at.
10 miles away, in a Burbank aerospace plant, a 32-year-old shipping clerk is listening to the news.
About 3 o'clock, there was some kind of announcement that they had found this missing lady's vehicle.
What happens next turns Eda Smith's life upside down.
But then they said they were making a house-to-house search. I instantly heard as if someone said to me very clearly, "She's not in a house." As soon as that thought registered, it was as if I were looking at a video or a movie. I didn't know if she needed help or what. No matter what I did, I could get away from it for a minute, but as soon as I had a free space in my head, it would come back to me. Why won't this leave me alone? I knew where she was.
In LA, a shipping clerk has a sudden disturbing vision of Melanie Uribe, a nurse who had been carjacked the night before.
I could see where she was. Going up into the canyon, I could see the curve in the road, a dirt path going to her, and a hill behind her. I've never experienced anything like this before in my life. Nothing of a criminal element. I have, ever since I was a very small child, seen things before they would happen, or seemed to know things that I shouldn't have known. When I shared it with my mother, she said, "Whatever you do, don't ever tell anybody." I just pretty much kept it to myself.
Unable to get the vision of the missing nurse out of her mind, Eda knows this time she has to tell someone.
When I get to a certain point, if I turn right, I'm going home. If I turn left, I'm almost immediately in front of the police station. So the argument I'm having with myself is, should I tell them or should I not? They're going to think I'm some kind of a nut. So what? What if you don't tell them and nobody gets to her in time? I couldn't turn my back on that if there was a possibility, the slightest possibility, that I was right. I turned left.
At the Foothill Division Police Station, the reluctant psychic speaks to a detective named Lee Ryan.
I have something I have to tell you. This missing lady, I could see where she was. Can you show me this on a map? And I said, sure.
Lopez Canyon is a remote hillside area in the San Gabriel Mountains above Pacoima.
He said, "You know, we haven't checked that area, but we will." And I remember looking at him and saying, "I have the feeling I will too."
My mom came home late and she had a peculiar look on her face, like she was troubled about something.
Eda's son, Andy, was 9 years old at the time.
And her and my cousin started talking about it, about her vision and seeing where this woman was, and kind of freaked me out a little bit.
It was about 4:15 maybe. I wanted to go before it got dark, and this was December. And immediately when I said, I have to go to this place,
curiosity took the best of me, and I wanted to go look too, me and my sister. So we got in the trans van and we left the house and we drove to that area where Lopez Canyon is located.
we'd go up Paxton Street, we'd cross Foothill, we'd go under the 118 freeway, and there's a sharp left turn that takes you into this canyon.
When we started slowly driving up the canyon, she said, keep your eye out, keep an eye open, be looking left to right, tell me if you see anything. And she was all the while, she was just kind of getting a feel out the air or something, just looking around, trying to catch whatever it was she saw, I guess. We slowly just made our way up the canyon, which was probably about 3 miles to the top.
We pull over, and I'm looking around to see if I see anything. And I said, I don't see anything, but I feel her. She's in this canyon.
My mom was truly convinced we were in the right spot. It's got to be back down the hill. We started to work our way down. We were just about ready to give up.
I noticed tire marks on the left embankment and tire marks on the right side. The area was big enough to where you could pull off and stop. And there's not a lot of areas up there that you can do that in. Something doesn't look right. It stood out. It was pronounced. And so I walked over and I laid my fingers into the impressions of the tire tread. I felt trauma, scared. I knew that this was tires from her vehicle. I pulled back onto the roadway. Had only gone about maybe 25, 30 feet.
My sister actually saw something off to the left. She said, "Wait a minute, Mom, I see something." From there, we started to one by one go out. The way it looked was just eerie. An open row with bushes on both sides. To me, it kind of looked like a church aisle, you know, with like the bushes being pews. I was only 9 years old, so it was kind of weird. And then there she was.
When my eyes get to the end of this object I'm looking at, she had on white nurse's shoes. And I said, "Oh my God."
My mom and my cousin freaked out and started running. You know, me being so young, I'm gonna run too.
I said, "I've got to get to the police."
As they head down the canyon, by chance, Eda spots an LAPD cruiser coming up the canyon.
I blew my horn, threw on my brakes, flagged him down. And I told him, "Look, we've just found somebody's body." He comes back and he says, "Well, it is a body." And I said, "Is it the nurse?" He said, "In all probability, I think so."
Eda Smith has found what an entire police force has been searching for.
I came to the station and Ryan contacted me and told me that a woman had come in, a woman named Eda Smith, and told him she thought the body might be located somewhere up in Lopez Canyon. Within 30 minutes, I was notified that the body had been found in Lopez Canyon.
Conway then heads to Lopez Canyon to meet with the officer who takes him to the body.
And what I saw was a white female laying face down with significant head trauma. And there wasn't any doubt in my mind that she had been murdered. I then directed officers to secure that location for the night because I didn't feel I could do an adequate crime scene. It's not possible for the investigating officer to do every step of the investigation. You have to use other resources, other detectives who are just as capable as you are.
Conway sends detectives to talk with Eda Smith about her so-called psychic vision.
It went on for hours. It went on till 10:30, maybe at night. I don't think they're believing me. I kept telling them the same thing. But this one officer, he became really belligerent, threw a chair, and raised his voice to intimidate me. "What, you think I'm involved in this? If I was capable of this, my husband would have been dead a long time ago. I'll take a lie detector test. I'll prove to you. I don't know anything about this other than what I've told you."
They take her up on the offer.
They said, "You failed."
Her children are brought in for questioning.
Still remember this guy. Gives me a lollipop, you know, and asks me a few questions. I'm answering now because I feel comfortable. But apparently it wasn't the answers he wanted to hear. And he just switched on me like that. And he started yelling at me and went from good cop to bad cop, as they say, and just totally scared me to death, you know. Yeah, I want my mama. No, I'm done. I wanted to keep my lollipop, but I was done.
Eda had said that when she drove up the canyon, she didn't see anything. And as she came back down the canyon, I think the 8-year-old announced that she saw something off the road. When the detectives interviewed the other individuals, they were not saying that the discovery occurred exactly that way. It made the individuals talking to her skeptical.
At that point, all conversation was over. They transported me to the Van Nuys jail, and I was booked and put in a cell.
In an LA suburb, a psychic finds the body of missing nurse Melanie Uribe. Now she finds herself accused of murder.
I am strip searched. I am cavity searched. I try to do the right thing, and I end up in jail.
Last evening, just before dark, a person other than police personnel discovered the body. When I get back to the station and I can sit down and contact the coroner, I probably will have some more information in another hour or two.
I didn't even know that she had been arrested. Someone told me that while I'm doing the crime scene. That caused me some concern because it had been my hope to, as time permitted, to eventually interview her in an effort to find out how she knew the information she knew. When I was told she was in jail, I believed that interview would be difficult because she likely would have contacted an attorney at that point. I had conversations with people who were involved in the decision to arrest her in an effort to release her. I did not believe for a minute that Eda Smith was involved in the murder.
But in order to get the psychic released, the detective needs to find the real killers. He has little evidence, except for a tissue box and a vague eyewitness description of the carjackers. December 18th, 1980, 24 hours after the discovery of the body, Conway gets his first major break. A woman calls, saying she knows who was involved and claims to have the murder weapon.
I did not tell her what the weapon was. I said, well, if you have the weapon, I'll know if you're telling the truth, so you tell me what the weapon is. She told me on the phone that the weapon was rock.
The coroner's report says the single mother had been beaten to death with a rock the size of a volleyball.
She expressed fear from the suspects, ultimately hung up and did not identify herself.
December 20th, another informant calls the detective. He says he also knows who was involved in the murder.
He ultimately agreed to meet with me in a parking lot. We then interviewed some of the individuals he named. Those individuals provided us with first-hand accounts of what they had been told by one of the suspects.
That suspect is 17-year-old Norman Willis of Pacoima.
Willis invoked his Fifth Amendment rights and did not speak to us.
But Norman Willis's parents do talk. They identify a friend of their son, 20-year-old Lewis Morgan.
He had an outstanding traffic warrant, and we arrested him for the traffic warrant. I advised him of his rights, and he waived his rights. Morgan initially denied any knowledge. He ultimately confessed to being involved. I think he just wanted to tell somebody.
Lewis Morgan states that on December 15th, he, along with Norman Willis and a third man, 21-year-old Spencer Nelson, decided to rob someone. Melanie Uribe just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Morgan told us that when they stopped on Eustis, Nelson got in the back of the truck with Uribe and raped her. They then all got back in the truck and they drove up Lopez Canyon. They walked her back off the road into the canyon. As they were walking back, according to Morgan, Nelson told Morgan, "We're going to have to kill her." Morgan said that he didn't want to kill her, he just wanted to tie her up. Morgan turned to go back to the truck to get something to tie her up with, and he heard a thump, and he turned around. He saw Uribe laying on the ground, and he saw Nelson striking her several times with a large rock. And they all walked back to the truck, Nelson carrying the rock. According to Morgan, they dropped Willis off at his house. Morgan and Nelson drove the truck to Romont. Nelson set it on fire, and they walked home.
Morgan then takes the detective to where they left the rock, in the gutter near his girlfriend's house. But it's gone. On the way back to the station, Conway remembers the call from the woman informant.
And I speculated that the lady that called me was likely his girlfriend, and I returned to the house and confronted her. She said, "I will give you the rock, but I have to go to the location by myself." I took the risk and let her do that, and 20 minutes later she came back with a bloody rock and a pillowcase. Morgan never tells me anything about an Eda Smith or any female being involved.
December 21st, 1980. Eda Smith has been in jail for 3 days.
At about 2 o'clock, all of a sudden, somebody appeared at my cell door, unlocked it, and said, "Come on, you're free to go." I didn't know why, didn't care why. I just wanted out of there.
She just looked pitiful. She looked like she lost weight in 3 days. And she just looked beat up. I mean, not physically beat up, but just emotionally beat down.
It's an experience I hope I never have again. I don't know how people have that experience and then turn around and repeat it and do it again and again.
I felt that the case, as we prepared it for court, was pretty solid. The truck was located at the place they said they burned it, and it was burned. The weapon was this rock, and the rock was found where they said they left it, and then a witness said, he showed me the rock, and here it is. There were pieces of evidence that corroborated what people were saying.
Norman Willis, Lewis Morgan, and Spencer Nelson are charged with first-degree murder, accessory to murder, rape, and kidnapping for robbery.
They needed money, so the obvious solution to them was, let's go steal it. Nelson had been in prison for a couple of years for a kidnap rape. Nelson's motivation, in my opinion, for killing Uribe was the prior victim, when he went to prison, identified him and testified to the rape and kidnap. So I believe that Nelson never intended to let another victim live.
They're convicted and sentenced to life. But what happened to the woman whose psychic vision led police to Melanie Uribe?
Never a word. Not a letter, not a phone call, nothing. They treated me like so much dirt that you kick out the door and the wind blows away, you know, with never another thought. And that really hurt. That really hurt because they were wrong.
A year later, Eda Smith sues the LAPD for false arrest.
Just because you're unusual, it doesn't mean you don't have rights.
James Blatt was her attorney.
She went out on a limb to try and find someone, although in an unconventional way, and she was successful. And for that, she was literally brutalized for 4 days.
I got dysentery and lost 12 pounds in 72 hours.
There was no probable cause for her to be arrested, simply because she found the body in an unusual way, and arresting her for that, for murder. I'm glad the jury agreed with us, and the judge agreed that having a psychic phenomenon is not probable cause to arrest someone.
I'll entertain anything that might provide me with information that's helpful in a case. Police agencies have long talked to and used information from people who say they're psychic, frequently with some success.
The answer to some questions is that there is no answer. And sometimes individuals have different gifts, and they could utilize those gifts to help people.
Yeah, I still pray for that lady. Every now and then she'll cross my mind, or I'll say prayer for her and everything. And
I'll never forget Melanie Uribe. I'll never forget what happened to her. Melanie was a victim of a senseless crime. I have no regrets of making the choice that I made. I didn't understand what made me do it then, but if I had it to do over, that I would do the same thing today.
This time on Psychic Investigators. In Napa Valley, 2 young women are stabbed to death in their home.
Large amounts of blood, just horrendous.
A 3rd roommate survives.
In a few minutes' time, my entire life was changed.
How could this happen in our Napa?
Police have the forensics, but no one to tie it to.
Who am I missing? Who did I forget? What am I overlooking?
A psychic says, look closer to home.
They knew this person. There was no question about it.
Napa Valley, the heart of California's idyllic wine country. a place of vineyards, breathtaking views, the good life, and if nothing else, a safe place to live. And then, Halloween 2004.
This is 911 emergency. What are you reporting?
Oh my God, we got attacked.
Who attacked you?
I don't know. I don't know what happened.
Okay.
Most of my roommates are hurt. Oh my God. I think they're dying. I swear to God. Do you know who might have done this? Oh God.
When the police arrive at the house on Dorset Street, they find 2 women dead. The scene is so gruesome, a female officer feels ill and has to leave. More police descend on the house.
The homicides had occurred in the upstairs of the residence. As we approached the staircase, there was an enormous amount of blood.
Detective Kirk Primo was a 14-year veteran with the Napa Police Department. Not wanting to contaminate the evidence on the stairs, Detective Primo uses a ladder to get his first look at the carnage.
Large amounts of blood. Just horrendous.
A double homicide. Leslie Mazzara and Adrian Insomnia, both 26.
I always live by the rule of the crime scene's always at least twice the size as what it appears.
Outside the house, one of the first pieces of evidence Detective Primo finds is a pile of cigarette butts.
They didn't appear to be weathered. They didn't appear to have been there for a long time.
The lone survivor of the vicious attack is 28-year-old Lauren Mianza. The bedrooms of Adrian and Leslie are on the 2nd floor. Lauren's bedroom is on the 1st floor at the back of the house.
I got a phone call, so I went into my room and took it, and I heard Adrian say goodnight, and that was about 10, I think. I went to bed about 11, and probably by 11:30, the house was pretty quiet.
By midnight, the young women are sound asleep.
I had never heard anything like it. I knew right away that it was something awful. And then I went to my door and stood kind of in the doorway under the stairs. I heard a male flying down the stairs. I figured I was next, not knowing what to do. I ran into the backyard. I've never, ever felt that terrified, like I was in a horror movie. I thought I was going to die. It was quiet except for screaming. I heard him kind of leave the house. Adrian, which I knew was her voice, she'd stopped screaming, but she was calling out for help. There's blood everywhere. Adrian just lying down next to her bed. She was alive still, but I could tell in her eyes she was gone. I had never really seen someone die before. To the right of Adrian was Leslie lying face down in a pile of clothing. I just turned around and went down the stairs, and I called 911. In a few minutes' time, my entire life was changed. I'd lost my friends, my roommates, and I'd been left untouched.
The only one who lived to tell the tale, police turned to Lauren for answers. Who would want to kill her roommates? Leslie Mazzara had moved to Napa about 6 months ago and landed a job at the vineyard of Hollywood legend, Francis Ford Coppola.
Leslie was very, very outgoing and very spunky. I had never met anyone like her. Just warm and just Southern hospitality, everything. Guys really liked her. Everybody kind of was drawn to her.
Adrian Insomnia grew up in the area and was an engineer for the city of Napa.
Adrian was different. She was much more, she was mellow, very good friend to people, just very smart individual.
These girls were tremendously well-liked, had tons and tons of friends, very social. There was no obvious motive that stood out as to why this crime may have happened. This was not going to be an easy case to solve.
For days, crime scene investigators worked the house. The killer entered through a push-up window. There they find fibers and what they hope is his blood. Nothing appears stolen. He's left no fingerprints and no weapon. All the evidence is sent for testing.
Well, the first reaction from the community was just shock and disbelief that something like this could happen in our quiet little Napa.
Marcia Dorgan covered the story for the Napa Valley Register.
People were worried, they were scared. I mean, they didn't know if they had a serial killer out there running around.
But the police don't think the murders were random. They think this is a crime of passion.
A pattern of the blood evidence that was collected, the anger and aggression.
The autopsy results support their theory. Cause of death, multiple stab wounds.
Focus was that the killer may have been an acquaintance or someone known to Leslie, as Leslie did leave a more active social life.
Leslie just attracted males. She had a lot of men interested in her.
2 weeks later, the town of Napa holds a candlelight vigil for the 2 murdered women. Police methodically question hundreds of their male acquaintances, starting with their inner circle. But after 3 weeks, the police are no closer to identifying the killer.
Daylight savings had started, so our days were very short, unfortunately. So any darkness, I couldn't stand.
Lauren and I, from the day of this incident, we met or talked on the phone daily. Lauren was very eager and very helpful in the investigation and wanted to be kept abreast.
So much evidence to process and so many potential suspects, the police are overwhelmed. And then something unexpected. A friend of Lauren's makes an appointment with 2 LA psychics, Marty and Michael Perry.
Allie had called me to let me know she was going to see the Perrys, go have a reading with them. She said that she would call me afterwards and let me know how it went.
The Perrys work as a team. Marty, an artist, claims to sketch what the spirits show her.
It's almost like automatic drawing. I get images of the people on the other side, and very often I'll have artists on the other side work through me. I'm in control, but I'm not.
Michael claims to channel them.
A medium's purpose is to be the vessel through which a deceased person communicates to a living person without getting in the way. It's like conscious possession. I'm there with you, but I'm not.
Allie records the session and tells them nothing about the murdered women. Michael Perry appears to fall into a trance.
I have 2 people here. One says my first name is A. She took our party. They said their life was taken. I can feel stabs up here around my neck, or my neck's cut. Murder, the same murder.
Two young women are stabbed to death in their Napa Valley home, while a third roommate escapes. 400 miles away, a pair of psychics claim to receive messages from the spirits of the murdered women.
Michael got on the phone and he said, I need to speak with you. And we set up an appointment for a phone interview or reading.
Marty and Michael felt that they could possibly help out in our investigation. I told Laura that I was open for anything.
A month after the murders, a phone reading is arranged. Lauren takes notes while Michael and Marty Perry record the session. Marty allows spirits to guide her hand as she begins to sketch, while Michael enters a trance and establishes contact with the murdered women, Leslie Mazzara and Adrian Insomnia.
You know, she's the loudest one. She's the talker to me.
Michael had told me that Adrian was coming through more clearly. She had a very analytical mind. She was definitely in the forefront of everything, whereas Leslie kind of stood back.
She said you to say you'd be dead soon. You understand?
Adrian knew that I had left the house. She would have not known I would have left the house unless she was already past and seeing things.
Michael claims to see the female police officer who first arrived at the murder scene.
She couldn't take it or didn't want to be in there. She left, didn't she? Is what she says.
When I heard that, I was very surprised, and I looked over to Kirk. I said, "Did that happen?" And he said, "Yes." That kind of sealed it for me.
You know, I had goosebumps just like she did. Those were details that were not released. Those were details that were kept very private as to not inhibit the investigation.
All this time, Marty Perry has been sketching the face of a man.
I did ask the girls on the other side to send me an image of the perpetrator. The biggest feeling was the goatee. When I get facial hair, and I'm drawing it, I start itching all over the place, and that's what I was getting when I was drawing that.
After the session, they emailed it to me, and I remember looking at it. It actually looked familiar. I wasn't sure why.
Could this be a portrait of the killer? Detective Primo adds the sketch to the case file in hopes it will trigger something.
This could be for real.
Perrys were interested in coming up and meeting with us in person, and so he definitely wanted to pursue that.
DNA results from the blood taken at the crime scene identify 3 people: Leslie, Adrian, and what police believe is the killer, a white male.
But these women were very popular women, and they had tons and tons of friends. Leslie had ties to so many different cities and states that they had to do all of that, and they just interviewed people.
Police ask all of the women's male friends to provide voluntary DNA samples.
There was several pools of individuals to be interviewed and to be sampled.
It wasn't just a local police department investigation. There were several state and federal agencies involved.
There was a lot of high and lows periods during the investigation when we felt that we might have somebody whose DNA was eventually going to come back and be a match to what we had. And then there was the lows when those didn't.
Over the next 6 weeks, DNA results eliminate suspect after suspect. Police are no closer to catching the killer.
We knew we had what it was going to take to link our assailant to the crime. It was just finding that assailant.
Looking for anything that might help to solve the case, the police meet with the psychic couple, this time in Napa. Michael Perry claims to connect once more with one of the murdered girls, Adrian.
I said to Lauren, "Who's Lily?"
Lauren can only think of Lily Prudhomme, Adrian's best friend.
They worked together very closely, so they knew each other well from that. Adrian, when I met her, lived across the street from Lily.
The two were so close that Lily had postponed her wedding so that she and Adrian could travel together. But what could Lily have to do with the murders?
There was no way that I even would second guess any Lily or anyone related to Lily being involved with this crime. It's something I completely dismissed. I didn't even write it down in my notes. Focus was more on Leslie. So anyone kind of on Adrian's side was not as heavily focused on. So there weren't a lot of flags going up at all.
Lauren felt just as I did that it was just Adrian's best friend and that it really didn't have any significance other than Adrian was trying to maybe get a message to Lily.
Maybe there are more answers at the house.
Lauren was clearly traumatized. You could see it.
Yeah, she didn't want to go to the house.
I quickly learned my limitations on what I could give and what I couldn't.
Even before the police officer and the psychics enter the house, Michael Perry claims to key into the crime.
I said, "Oh, there are blood splats that you found out on the porch." I said, "That's his blood." And he said, "Yes, we believe so." I said, "Oh, the window opened up." And he climbed in through the windows and he found blue fibers on the windowsill. Kirk said, "Yes."
Inside, no evidence of that horrific night remains. Michael Perry goes straight upstairs.
I knew immediately which room it had happened in.
Michael ran his hand along the banister and it stopped and said that he believed the killer's blood had been located on the banister in these locations. In fact, that is where it had been found.
So we stood in the room for a while, and of course there was nothing there. It had all been cleaned out. I remember saying to him, "You found one girl here and you found the other girl here, didn't you?" And he said, "Yes." Adrian was doing most of the communicating with me, and she told me that the other girl had been stabbed first, then attacked Adrian. She put up a big struggle.
Then, Michael Perry says what the police already suspect.
I strongly felt that it was someone they absolutely knew. There was no question about it in my mind that they knew this person.
He has one more message from Adrian.
She kept referencing a boyfriend.
Months after the stabbing deaths of 2 young roommates in Napa, a pair of psychics give police a name they claim comes from the dead women themselves. The name Lily.
Adrian's best friend, Lily, who was engaged at the time to a gentleman by the name of Eric Coppel, had come over and done some work on the dryer at the residence. Eric Coppel's name had not surfaced. An interview actually had been done with Lily, his fiance, who was a co-worker of Adrian's.
The police have interviewed over 1,000 men, but not the 26-year-old land surveyor, Eric Coppel.
I added him to my checklist. He was the 11th item on the checklist to make contact with him, to do an interview and obtain a voluntary DNA sample. When I first saw the picture of Eric, the first thing that stood out was the sketch that Marty and Michael had provided and how accurate it was, looking almost identical to Eric. It also put pieces together, such as what Lily meant.
Before he can interview Lily's boyfriend, Eric Coppel, Detective Primo is taken off the case.
My rotation to rotate out of investigations was about to come up. I created this checklist to which I passed on to the incoming detective. The list was never followed up upon, and Eric was never contacted.
The investigation inched along for nearly a year. Leads dried up, and no more tips were coming in.
Lots of community pressure, lots of community uncertainty, and the pressure was that we need to solve this.
And no one wanted answers more than Lauren Mianza.
I was fearful that it would just be forgotten about, I think, and become a cold case.
It was finally decided through the department that we would go ahead and reveal the brand of cigarette that had been collected and sampled DNA the night of the homicide. A rare brand, and one that had been introduced not long before the crime had occurred.
DNA on the cigarette butts matches the DNA of the blood found at the crime scene. Blood, the police believe, belongs to the murderer.
We didn't associate with any smokers. And then I stopped. I thought, you know, Lily smokes. And so does her boyfriend at the time. They smoked. So I gave them Eric Coppel's name.
September 22nd, 2005. The police released the distinctive brand of cigarettes to the media. Camel Turkish Gold. Eric Coppel's brand. 5 days later, accompanied by his now wife Lily, the quiet land surveyor turns himself in.
Was shocked at first, and then it kind of made sense. It didn't stick out, but he kind of just survived under large personality of Lily.
No one in the community, and especially people that knew him, thought that Eric was ever a suspect, let alone a killer.
Eric Matthew Coppel is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances, lying in wait and using a knife.
He was fearful of losing Lily. He was fearful that Adrian was convincing Lily to leave him. And their wedding had been called off, and he blamed Adrian. Adrian and Lily had planned a trip to Australia together, and so he was just deathfully afraid of losing her. So his answer was, kill the one that's in the way of my happiness with Lily. Kill the problem.
On Halloween night 2004, Eric Coppel admits he drank heavily at a party, during which he quarreled with Lily. A few hours later, armed with a knife, he entered the house on Dorset Street through an unlocked window. He creeps upstairs, and at this point the sequence of the attack is only known to Eric. But in the end, Adrian and Leslie lay dying in Adrian's room after being repeatedly stabbed. Adrian was the intended target. It seems Leslie Mazzara may have died trying to help her friend.
Still today, I can speculate on why he didn't touch me or, he avoided my room. I'm not sure. Always be a question, so.
January 2007. More than 2 years after the murders, the quiet land surveyor faces the court.
Do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Guilty, Your Honor.
His wife, Lily, who the Perrys had named as key to the case, was there at his sentencing.
Eric, there is nothing in this world that you could do to make me love you less.
I am a broken man. Oh, it sucks. A man splintered by penetrating awareness of my own potential for wickedness.
And it is ordered Eric Matthew Coppel is to serve a life sentence without possibility of parole.
Finally, some closure for the family and friends.
I was just so thankful that there had been a resolution to everything.
After having gone through this and having the experience of working with mediums, don't overlook. They may be a very good asset to your investigation, and at least they may be a small piece to that puzzle that you're missing.
I felt Adrian was a very strong personality, a very determined girl, and that she was determined to put this guy away or do something about it.
And that's what we do this for, is to help heal people, help realize that there is another side, and that we don't die.
The first night when I was questioned, I asked, what do people in my situation generally do? And Kirk had said, people don't generally survive in this situation. They're usually killed too. The experience with the Perrys has given me a faith that after we pass, that we can still have a connection to the ones we've loved in this lifetime.